When a woman starts to pull away, it often leaves men feeling confused and unsettled. It's a common experience that many men go through, yet the reasons behind it aren't always obvious. This emotional distance can feel like a form of rejection, and it's easy for men to jump to conclusions, assuming she has lost interest or, worse, found someone else. However, these assumptions often miss the mark and can lead men down a path of frustration and self-doubt. Understanding the true reasons behind why she might pull away can give you a distinct advantage and help you handle the situation with confidence and emotional intelligence. Attraction is a gradual process. One of the first things to understand is that women don't just suddenly fall out of love or stop feeling attraction for a man overnight. Attraction, just like love, develops over time, and it can also fade in stages. This process is often gradual, and for many men, it's a mystery when they first experience it. In the early stages of a relationship, everything is exciting. There is mystery, newness, and a sense of adventure. The woman is intrigued by you, and you are the challenge. Your presence is something special, and she actively seeks to learn more about you. But as time goes on, the mystery starts to fade. She gets to know you better, and the excitement begins to settle into routine. When everything becomes predictable, the sense of challenge that once existed begins to diminish. This is not something she does intentionally or consciously, but as the relationship progresses, things can start to feel a bit too comfortable. At this stage, she may begin to pull away, and this can feel like a sign that something has changed. The challenge, which was once a key part of the attraction, starts to disappear. She knows how you feel about her, and she understands your emotional responses. The spontaneity and unpredictability that once kept things interesting start to fade, and without those elements, the attraction begins to feel somewhat less intense. The emotional test. Are you in control? When a woman pulls away, it's not always a sign that she's lost interest. Often, it's a subconscious test to see how you handle emotional shifts. She may want to gauge how emotionally resilient you are. This is something that many men overlook, but it is an important factor. In relationships, she's wondering, how do you handle distance? Do you panic when things start to feel uncertain? Are you able to maintain your composure, or do you lose control of your emotions? The way you react to her emotional distance is critical. If you respond by chasing her, texting her more frequently, calling her repeatedly, or trying to rearrange, you're scheduled to be there for her. You're actually showing her that you've lost your emotional control. This behavior is not only unattractive, but it also demonstrates a lack of self-respect and emotional maturity. Women are drawn to men who can maintain their composure in challenging situations. They want to see that you're emotionally stable, and that you can handle the highs and lows of life without losing your balance. When you chase after her in response to her pulling away, it shows that you are emotionally reactive and lack self-control. This kind of behavior diminishes her attraction to you because it signals neediness and desperation. Attraction is built on mystery, challenge, and emotional stability. If you're always available, always giving, always present, it loses its value. Women don't value things that come too easily. They value things that are rare, things they have to work for. When you make yourself too available and constantly chase her, she starts to feel that she doesn't have to work for your attention anymore. And when she doesn't have to work for it, she stops valuing it. The power of absence. One of the most powerful tools you can use when a woman pulls away is the power of absence. The best way to regain control of the situation is not by chasing after her or trying to make her feel guilty about her behavior. Instead, you should allow some emotional space and distance. This doesn't mean you should completely ignore her, but it does mean that you should stop being overly available. When you stop chasing her and give her the space she subconsciously craves, it begins to create a vacuum in her mind. She starts to feel the absence of your presence, and that's when things can begin to shift. If she has started to take you for granted, the moment you stop giving her your constant attention, she will start to notice the void. She may begin to wonder why you haven't been reaching out, or whether you've lost interest in her. This subtle shift can reignite her attraction to you because now there is mystery and tension where there was once predictability. Women don't fall in love with constant presence. They fall in love with absence because absence creates longing. When something is always available, it loses its value. But when something disappears, it creates a sense of mystery and curiosity. The absence of your attention will make her start to miss you. This is a powerful dynamic, and it's one that most men don't fully understand. Many men make the mistake of thinking that they need to constantly be in contact with her to keep her interested. They think that if they stop texting her or calling her, she will forget about them. But the opposite is true. By pulling back, you allow her to feel the space between you, and this can trigger a new wave of attraction. Why chasing never works. It's natural for men to want to fix things when they sense something is wrong in the relationship. When a woman starts pulling away, many men feel the need to explain themselves or beg for her attention. However, chasing her and trying to win her back with words will never work. Attraction doesn't work that way. Attraction is not built on explanations or desperate attempts to prove how much you care. Instead, it is built on emotional control and the ability to remain composed when things are uncertain. If you constantly chase after her, you will reinforce the idea that you are emotionally dependent on her. This is the exact opposite of what creates attraction. What you should do instead is match her energy. If she pulls away, don't overcompensate. Don't text her more, don't call her more, and don't rearrange your life to accommodate her. Stay neutral. When she reaches out, respond, but don't invest more emotional energy than she's putting in. If you stop over-investing emotionally and allow her to feel your absence, she will start to reassess the situation and potentially realize that she's been taking you for granted. When a woman starts pulling away, it's easy to feel confused, anxious, and frustrated. Her behavior may seem like a clear sign of disinterest, and for many men, the immediate response is to panic. Suddenly, she's distant. She takes longer to reply to your messages, cancels plans at the last minute, or simply doesn't seem as engaged as she once was. The natural instinct is often to chase after her, to overcommunicate, to ask if everything is okay, or even to beg for her attention. This response is common, but unfortunately, it's also a big mistake. What most men fail to recognize is that her pulling away is not always a rejection. It's a test. What is the silent test? When a woman pulls away, this shift in behavior is often not about losing interest, but rather about testing your emotional resilience. The truth is, she may not even be fully aware that she's testing you, but her subconscious mind is at work. She's wondering how you will respond to the distance. She's wondering, will you chase her? Will you panic and fall apart? Or will you remain emotionally stable and composed? This is what we call the silent test. It's not an intentional game she's playing, but rather a natural emotional response that helps her assess your strength, your independence, and your ability to maintain your emotional equilibrium. Essentially, she's asking herself, is he emotionally strong enough to handle the space I'm creating? Can he hold his ground when I pull away? Does he have the confidence to trust that everything will be okay, even in the face of uncertainty? Most men fail this test because they don't recognize it for what it is. They see her withdrawal as a sign of trouble, a warning that something is wrong, and they panic. This panic leads them to overcompensate by texting more, calling more, or showing up unannounced to try and fix the situation, but this only makes things worse. It demonstrates to her that she is in control, that she has the power to make you chase her, and this is the opposite of what creates lasting attraction. How the test unfolds when she starts pulling away, you might feel like the connection is fading, but this is an opportunity for you to prove your emotional strength. She's subconsciously watching to see how you respond. Will you let her space breathe, or will you try to fill it up with desperate attempts to regain her attention? The men who pass this test are the ones who don't chase, don't overreact, and don't let her absence dictate their emotional state. Instead of texting her endlessly or apologizing for something you haven't done. You stay calm. You take a step back. This is where emotional control becomes paramount. If you continue to chase after her and try to overcompensate, you'll send the message that you're unsure of yourself, that you need her validation to feel good about yourself. But if you remain calm and allow the silence to unfold naturally, you demonstrate confidence, emotional maturity, and strength, qualities that are incredibly attractive to women. What happens when you stop chasing, and allow her space? Something powerful begins to happen. Emotional distance is created, and this changes the dynamic between you both. The silence that follows her pulling away allows her to begin reassessing the relationship. Suddenly, the emotional gap forces her to confront the reality of your absence. She starts wondering, has he lost interest? Is he seeing someone else? Is he really okay without me? This gap in communication makes her question her own feelings. Is she taking you for granted? Has she assumed that you will always be there waiting for her? She may start to feel a sense of regret, a realization that she might have pushed you too far. This is when attraction starts to shift again, and she begins to feel that emotional pull once more. She may not even realize it consciously, but the longer you stay silent, the more she begins to miss your presence. You've created a new dynamic in the relationship. Instead of constantly being available, you've made yourself emotionally scarce, and this scarcity is what triggers her desire to reconnect. This doesn't mean you should be unavailable all the time, but rather that you should not be so easily accessible that she never has to work for your attention. Why desperation is counterproductive. The major pitfall most men fall into when a woman pulls away is the desperate need to fix things. They believe that if they explain themselves, apologize, or try to show how much they care, she will come back to them. Unfortunately, this approach almost always backfires. Women are not drawn to men who are overly available and constantly seeking their validation. In fact, this behavior is a huge turnoff. When you chase her, you are essentially saying, "I am afraid of losing you," which is the exact message you do not want to send. Women want to be with men who are emotionally stable, who have a life and identity outside of the relationship, and who don't depend on the relationship to feel whole. When you chase after her, it shows that you're willing to sacrifice your emotional control and self-respect for her attention, and this undermines your value in her eyes. What you need to understand is that when a woman pulls away, it is not always a sign that she's lost interest. It could simply be a test to see how you handle the situation. Will you allow her space and stand your ground, or will you chase after her and compromise your own emotional well-being? The men who can maintain their composure and stay emotionally grounded are the ones who pass this test and rekindle the attraction. The importance of matching her energy. One of the best ways to respond when a woman pulls away is to match her energy. This doesn't mean you should become distant or aloof in a way that makes things worse. It simply means that you should not overcompensate by becoming more available than usual or desperately trying to fix the situation. If she starts to pull away and reduces communication, don't flood her inbox with text messages. If she cancels plans, don't immediately try to reschedule. Let her make the first move. If she reaches out to you, respond, but don't overinvest. Don't act like it's the best thing that's ever happened to you when she decides to reach out. Instead, stay calm and neutral. Keep your emotional energy balanced and don't let her feel that you're desperately waiting for her attention. By doing this, you demonstrate that you are not emotionally dependent on her for validation. You are showing her that you value your own emotional peace, that you're not going to allow her absence to dictate how you feel. When you don't react with desperation, she will feel the shift in the dynamic. She will begin to wonder. When a woman pulls away and then suddenly reaches out again after some time has passed, it can initially feel like a victory. You might feel relieved or even excited, thinking she has realized your worth and is now ready to reconnect. However, this is precisely the moment where you must stay grounded and avoid slipping back into old patterns of behavior. It's tempting to act as though her reaching out is the best thing that has happened to you, But if you do, you risk losing the control you've worked so hard to maintain. When she returns, the worst thing you can do is drop everything for her. Don't rush to respond immediately or go out of your way to accommodate her. If you do, you risk allowing her to feel like she's still in control of the situation, which undermines the progress you've made. Instead, treat the situation as an opportunity to reinforce your boundaries and maintain the emotional distance you've established. She needs to prove that she truly values you and is serious about reestablishing the connection. If she's reached out to you, it's because she feels something missing. This is your chance to let her show that she wants to be with you for the right reasons, not just because she's bored or feels lonely. By not falling into the trap of rushing to give her all your attention, you make her work for it. This is crucial. If she truly values you, she will prove it, but not with words. Words are easy. It's her actions that will demonstrate her commitment and interest. You've created emotional distance, and now it's up to her to bridge that gap. If she does not make an effort, then you've learned a valuable lesson. Your absence has made her realize the value of your presence. This is an important dynamic to understand, because it shifts the balance of power in your favor. The worst mistake you can make is to act desperate when she returns. Avoid falling back into patterns where you overinvest emotionally or become too eager to please her. Desperation is never attractive. Instead, stay composed, calm, and grounded. She must prove that she deserves your attention, and you must hold firm to your boundaries. Don't be afraid to let her see that your time and energy are valuable, and that she must meet your standards if she truly wants to reconnect. If you immediately drop everything the moment she reaches out, you risk setting the relationship back. It sends the message that you are still willing to prioritize her over yourself, which may lead her to believe she has control over you. Instead, make sure you continue living your life as you were before. Keep your focus on your own priorities, and don't let the situation dictate your emotional state. This will make you more attractive to her, because it signals that you are a man who has self-respect and isn't dependent on her validation. You've worked hard to create emotional distance and to show that you can be independent and confident in your own space. Don't undo that progress by rushing back into old patterns that made her take you for granted in the first place. When she reaches out, respond, but don't fall into the trap of over-investing. Keep your responses neutral, and let her see that you are still the same man who doesn't need her to complete your life. This subtle shift in dynamic is what will keep her interested. When she begins to feel the distance and understands that you are not at her beck and call, something powerful happens. She will begin to realize that your presence is not a given, and she may start to reevaluate her feelings for you. This creates a powerful attraction, because it reminds her of the mystery and emotional tension that initially drew her to you. When she begins to feel that she might lose you, she will start to miss the connection you shared. This is when things start to shift back in your favor, but only if you maintain control and continue to hold your emotional ground. It's also important to remember that if she truly values you, she will make an effort to earn your attention and trust again. This could mean her taking steps to demonstrate her commitment, such as initiating deeper conversations, planning to spend time together, or showing genuine interest in your life and well-being. If she doesn't make any effort and simply expects things to fall back into place as if nothing happened, then it's a sign that she doesn't fully appreciate the space you've created. In that case, it might be time to reassess the relationship and ask yourself whether this is someone who truly values you, or just wants the comfort of your presence without putting in the work. It's also crucial to avoid overthinking the situation. Don't get caught up in analyzing every little thing she says or does when she reaches out. Stay grounded, and don't let her sudden reappearance disrupt your emotional stability. If you've built a strong sense of self and value your time and emotional energy, you will be able to approach the situation with confidence and clarity. She will respect you more if she sees that you don't need her validation to feel good about yourself. One of the most significant lessons you can learn in relationships is that you are in control of your own happiness. You should never rely on someone else to define your worth or make you feel complete. If you've reached a point where you are living your life independently, where you are fulfilled on your own, then the relationship becomes an addition to your life, not the center of it. This mindset shift is crucial because it allows you to move forward with confidence, knowing that you are not desperate for her attention or approval. Finally, when she reaches out again, remember that it's okay to take your time before fully re-engaging. You don't need to jump back into the same dynamic you had before. Let her work for your attention, and let her prove that she is genuinely interested in reconnecting. If she shows that she is willing to invest in the relationship with actions rather than just words, then you can consider taking things further. But always keep in mind that your emotional independence and self-respect should remain your top priority. In conclusion, when a woman returns after pulling away, it's important to stay composed and not fall into the trap of acting desperate or eager. Maintain your emotional control, hold firm to your boundaries, and let her prove that she values you through her actions. If you do this, you'll not only keep the power in the relationship, but also create a dynamic where she values you more, because you've shown that you are not willing to settle for anything less than what you deserve. Here's the truth. Not every woman will come back, and that's perfectly okay. If she doesn't return after pulling away, then, in reality, she's done you a favor. The last thing you want is to invest your time, energy, and emotions in someone who only stays around when you're chasing after her. You deserve someone who chooses to stay because they genuinely value you, not because you begged for it or because you made yourself emotionally available at every turn. In life, it's easy to get caught up in the idea that if we chase hard enough, we can win someone back. But this chase only leads to dissatisfaction. Chasing after someone who isn't willing to reciprocate only pushes you further away from what you truly deserve. Someone who is equally committed and emotionally invested in the relationship. That's where detachment comes into play. Detachment is often misunderstood as coldness or indifference, but it's far from that. Detachment is about emotional control, self-respect, and having the strength to step back and let things unfold as they will. It's about not over-investing emotionally in someone who isn't giving you the same level of emotional investment. In return, when you stop chasing after a woman, you create a shift in the dynamic of the relationship. At first, she may not notice much. She might even feel relieved, thinking she can breathe a little easier. But as days turn into weeks and your silence continues, she starts to feel the absence. At some point, she'll start checking her phone more often, wondering why you haven't reached out. She may even begin to wonder if you've lost interest or if you've moved on completely. This shift in her mind forces her to confront her own feelings and emotions. It's in this moment that silence becomes powerful. The longer you remain silent, the more uncertain she becomes about where she stands. And this uncertainty is intoxicating. It sparks her curiosity. She starts to question if she has misjudged you, if she took you for granted, and if she might have pushed you too far. She'll begin to feel the weight of your absence in a way that makes her realize how valuable you were in her life. This is the power of detachment. The longer you remain detached, the more she'll start to feel a sense of loss, and this emotional void will gradually create a space where attraction can reignite. Silence, however, isn't just about being physically silent. It's about emotional silence. It's about no longer chasing her with your emotions, texts, or actions. When you detach emotionally, you stop reacting to her every move. You stop waiting for her to text you back or show you affection. You start living your life on your own terms, not based on her responses or actions. And that's when you start to feel powerful. Detachment isn't about playing games or pretending that you don't care. It's about showing that your life, happiness, and emotional well-being don't revolve around her. You are choosing to live for yourself, not for her validation or attention. And as soon as you make this shift, you begin to change the relationship dynamic. You become less predictable, less dependent on her behavior to feel validated, and more centered in your own life. When you stop seeking her approval, she will start to notice and feel the absence. This is where the scarcity principle comes into play. The less available you are emotionally, the more she begins to value your presence. This is how attraction works. When something is always there, it loses its value. But when something becomes scarce, it becomes more desirable. The absence of your constant attention will create a void that will draw her back in. But remember, detachment is not about manipulating her emotions. It's not about trying to force her into chasing you or making her feel bad for pulling away. It's about regaining control over your own emotional state. You stop chasing because you realize that you don't need her to feel validated or complete. You start to focus on your own growth, your own life, and your own passions. You prioritize yourself, your goals, and your own happiness. And when you do that, the dynamic of the relationship naturally shifts. One of the most important aspects of detachment is realizing that you don't need someone's presence in your life to feel happy or fulfilled. So often, we become too emotionally invested in the idea of someone being in our lives. But in reality, we must always keep in mind that our own happiness should never be tied to anyone else. This realization is liberating because it gives you the strength to let go of the emotional dependency you might have developed. When you detach emotionally, you start to reclaim your sense of self-worth and confidence. Instead of constantly seeking her approval, you start to recognize your own value. You don't need anyone to affirm your worth because you already know you are valuable. When you understand this, your whole approach to the relationship shifts. You stop chasing, begging, or waiting for her validation, and instead, you become the person you've always been meant to be: confident, self-assured, and emotionally independent. This change in mindset doesn't just help you in this specific situation, but it also changes the way you approach future relationships. You will no longer settle for someone who isn't emotionally available or who doesn't value you in the way you deserve. When you are emotionally detached in a healthy way, you can identify when someone is not reciprocating your feelings and let go without guilt or self-doubt. You are no longer afraid of losing someone because you understand that your own happiness doesn't rely on anyone else's presence in your life. And that's the key to not just attracting, but keeping a woman. The woman who chooses to stay with you isn't someone who stays because you're constantly chasing her or begging for her affection. She stays because she chooses you. She values you, not because you've made yourself emotionally available, on demand, but because you've established your own sense of worth and self-respect. She sees you as a man who doesn't need her to feel complete, and that's exactly what makes you so attractive. In the end, the key to attracting and keeping a woman isn't through constantly chasing or seeking validation. It's through emotional control, self-respect, and detachment. It's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to chase anyone to prove his worth. When you reach this point, you'll begin to notice a shift not just in your relationships, but in your life overall. By focusing on your own growth and well-being, you'll naturally attract the right people who value you for who you are, not for how much you chase them. And once you realize that, everything will fall into place. When you stop chasing, you start to live a life of purpose and emotional control. And that's when you'll begin to see the kind of relationships you've always wanted.